Um, when you
Okay,
see me put up,
we'd like to welcome everybody to episode 7 of the Keep Rochdale Affordable podcast. Me and Adina worked out ahead of time that she wasn't supposed to speak while I was trying to get Instagram going, but she did it anyway. Um, so I'm sure you all can relate. Anybody that's in a relationship, if you're
no, I was just trying to tell him that when he sees me put up Chewy, it is time to end the live.
okay, don't worry, we're not ending just yet. Um, So, so in any case, there's been a lot of developments going on here at Rochdale and in the New York City media and the political class that people are no doubt aware of. And Adina is going to give a short introduction of what's been happening recently. And that's going to allow me to share out the live stream feed to various social media pages to try to build the widest audience possible. You'll see on the bottom of the screen that there's a scroll telling you that you can call in and participate live in the discussion. The best way to do that is to text me at 917-678-0557 to let us know you want to talk to us on the podcast. And then we will contact you to just let us know your building number and that you live here at Rochdale. Or if there are other cooperators in other buildings and other kind of cooperative communities that want to speak to us, we'll be more than happy to put you on as well. So in any case, Adina, the floor is yours. And
Thank
let
you.
us know. So what is happening at Rochdale, Adina?
Okay, thank you, John. Okay, so welcome everyone to Keeping Rochdale Affordable. Thank you guys for joining us as usual. We appreciate you. Okay, so the first thing on
So,
our agenda, huh?
sorry, that was me. Good.
Okay, so the first thing on our agenda is that we are going to Albany. Yay, we're going to Albany. So
Adina's
the
not going to Albany. I'm going. Okay.
okay,
Adina's
so
birthday.
okay. We are together, John. Okay,
Okay.
so basically John has packed his bag and he is ready to go to Albany. Okay, so the bus basically will be leaving from the library on 137th Avenue. It will be leaving at 7 a.m. sharp. John already set his clock, so he's ready to go.
Because John
And
don't get up that early. Like
no,
ever.
John don't get up that early. So he already set his clock and he is ready to go off at 4. So he can get there at 7 a.m. Do not be late. The bus will leave you, and we don't want that. So this trip was organized, funded, and paid for by elected officials and also the board members. So, I want to say thank you very much for that. Approximately 2 buses will be leaving. There should be 3, but I think it's approximately 2 buses full as of right now. If more people sign on, then I think that they're gonna have another bus. So I think in total they're looking for 3 buses to be going to Albany, and this was funded by the elected officials and also by the board members. That's what's happening on Wednesday. Now, we know that where we got to meet, we know the bus will be there, and we know where we're going. However, there is no transparency after that. So when the people get to Albany, they don't know what's going to happen. Meaning that they don't know who they're going to speak to, who will be allowed to speak, exactly where in Albany we're going, who will be speaking to us. So John and I was talking, and I think that the board members need to be more transparent in that part of it, and that part of the bus trip, and not to keep the residents in the dark. So we're tired of being in the dark. So we basically want the transparency on that, and the transparency is when we get there, who we going to be speaking to, who will be speaking to us, and who will be speaking on our behalf.
And
And
also, what are the concrete demands? What are we fighting for? We have to be
me
on the
too.
same page about that before we go and speak with elected officials.
Yes, we don't want no outburst or anything like that. So we need to know on that page what will be happening. Second on the agenda is that John and I went to Brooklyn this weekend. Okay, so let me try to fix this up. John and I went to Brooklyn this weekend, and the reason why we went to Brooklyn this weekend was because some elected officials were going to be there. And our job on Saturday was to get the elected officials to write an open letter and all of them to sign that letter and for it to be delivered to Kathy Hochul's. Now, you may ask, what who's Kathy Hochul and how can she help us? She is one of the three people that can help Rochdale. Okay, and how can she help Rochdale? By giving us grants, by helping to refinance the mortgage into a lower rate, by helping to pass bills that could fund Rochdale. These buildings are old and the residents cannot bear to keep this up. So, such as high carrying charges. So, our thing is to get Kathy to help fund Rochdale. That's the only thing because the residents cannot fund it. I can't fund it, and even if we put all the residents together, we cannot fund Rochdale. And it's not only Rochdale that's going through this; it's all the Mitchell that are going through this. So if she can put a bill that can help fund all of this, then our life will change big time. So the focus is on Kathy Hochul. Okay, so that's that. So the third thing is that I wanted to talk about is that the board meeting on Tuesday. So we were all excited about the board meeting on Tuesday because we felt that there would be some kind of resolution moving forward. But we walked out of there disappointed. And the reason why we walked out of there disappointed is that how do we wanted to find out how do we get from right where we at right now to making Rochdale more affordable? And we didn't get that answer. You know why we didn't get the answer? First of all, nobody showed up. Not no nobody showed up, but nobody that can help us showed up. One person showed up, which was
Adrian Adams.
Adrian Adams. She showed up, and but I think it takes more than her to move this boat, to rock this boat. And we were basically disappointed. And why we're disappointed again is because we're still here. So we need to know how do we get from here the 57% that was proposed,
Proposed
not
by the
proposed, but
HCR.
what
It was
ACL came back with 57%. How do we get from 57% to a much lower carrying charge? So we were disappointed in that, right,
yeah.
John?
Yes, and even with Adrian Adams, like I give her credit for paying for the bus, helping to pay for the bus. I give them full credit for organizing the trip. I give her credit for showing up, which a lot of other elected officials didn't do. They sent their staffers, and Cook, for example, didn't even send the staff. So she gets more credit than the rest of them for showing up for us. However, she's known about this issue for months. And for her to come, like I agree with her 1,000%, and I said so on calling Hochul and asking her to meet with our residents, telling her to come to Rochdale Village to see the conditions, to speak to our residents. So she gets full credit for that. But however, that phone call could have taken place months and months ago. You mean to tell me that the city council speaker can't get on the phone with the governor and have her answer her calls? If that's the case, we really got a problem. But I don't think that that's the case. And aside from which, the effort should have been made. And so for this meeting to be postponed 2 months, and then our residents be told by Jamani Williams that he can't meet with us directly, that we should wait for this meeting and that he would be there, and then he's not there, it's a problem. And it's a reason why residents were so dissatisfied, and it could lead to demoralization, which is the last thing that we need right now. So that's the reason why we were frustrated. So when we went to this rally held by the New York Working Families Party, that's how Adina got the shirt, by the way, and that's how I got.
Yeah, I was like, I need a shirt. I need a shirt. I was
So
like, me.
She got us 2 free shirts. So in any case, the Working Families Party represents the more progressive wing of the Democratic Party. These are people who want to tax the rich. These are people who want to fund working class services and want to begin to reorder the priorities that is not focused on tax breaks for the rich, but is focused on actually providing real services for the real needs of the working class, the poor, the oppressed in this state. And so we'd already spoken to a lot of these politicians, but we had a specific ask, which is it's a small thing for them to send an open letter, a public open letter to Hattie Hochul, to Carl Hastie, the Senate Assembly Speaker, and to the majority leader of the Senate, Andrea Stewart Cousins. Why those three people? Because for generations, the New York State budget gets negotiated in a way that it's basically only three people in the room that make all the decisions. And we have to be in the same room with these people in order for them to understand what's going on. Now, we don't have any illusions about Kathy Hochul, that Kathy Hochul takes money from the billionaire class, that Kathy Hochul takes money from banks like Wells Fargo and Chase and the rest of them. However, if you look at the history, power concedes nothing without a demand, okay? And a closed mouth doesn't get fed. And we have to advocate for what we need, whether they say they can afford it or not, whether they get it or not. And one of the ways we can make them get it is force them to be in a room with residents that have real anxiety about the future of our community, so that they know, and they can't say they didn't know, exactly what the consequences would be if Rochdale is not provided the same rescue that they've repeatedly provided to billionaires who destroyed the world economy. So that was the logic behind all of this. So that is just some of the things that have been going on here at Rochdale. There's a lot to catch up on. There was the article in the Gothamist newspaper, which was a very big thing for us. It was a very big thing for the residents to finally be heard in the news media. Got it?
Yes, and I wanted to touch a point on that when we went on Saturday to the meeting with the elected officials, and they all read the paper. There was
Everybody.
like, once you mentioned Rochdale, there was like, oh yeah, I saw it in the Gotham. Oh yeah, they all read it. So it's a very, very big thing. It's out there. It is. Let me tell you something. This is a very, what Trump would say, huge paper. And I was like, you read the paper? I think there was like, yeah, like so many. There was like maybe 100 people was there.
Yeah, it was like 100 or 200 people.
Yeah, and these are not rinky dinky people. Not rinky dinky, but I'm just saying these are like,
They represented a big chunk of the New York City political class. Yeah.
Yes, they did. There's another class up there, and they all read the paper. So they are.
Yeah.
We're noticeable. We're getting it out there about Rochdale. Okay, it's just not in this community, but it's gonna be in the news. Okay, our name is gonna be out there, and they're gonna say, look, Rochdale need help, please come and help us. Okay, because before now, maybe they didn't really know about Rochdale, but now we want Rochdale on the lips of everybody to talk about what we're going through, because we are desperate in need of help. Nobody can afford this $500 and $600 and $700 increase. So we want everyone to know that we need this help desperately. So what basically John and I are trying to do, and some of the other residents, it's not just John and I. People are calling, people are writing, people are doing everything. So we just want to get it out there that we need help, and we need desperate help. Because if we don't get this help, if we don't get this funded from the state, then a lot of us are gonna be out of an apartment. We're gonna be living with our kids. Kids are gonna be living with us. We're gonna be homeless. People are gonna go nursing home. We have to make other living arrangements as to how to handle this.
Adina,
And look at the situation. Even
sorry.
today, you may say, "Oh, I can pay. I can pay it for this year and next year." But then what happened when they come again and they put another increase?
Yeah.
So we have to stop it.
Once they get their foot in the door, it's going to be never-ending increases, and it's going to be privatization and gentrification. And we all watched this happen to Harlem. We watched this happen to other communities, and this doesn't happen to white communities. It happens to communities of color, and it happens because of neglect, and it happens because of contempt for our past gains and a lack of respect for where these communities came from. They just didn't spring up out of nowhere. They were built from the struggles of the New York City civil rights movement. They were built and supported by the trade union movement. And if we are going to keep them, we are going to have to fight in some of the similar ways in which those movements did. I just want to highlight a comment from Sean Chandler. He says his friends from Brooklyn read it. Definitely a big deal. And also, speaking of which, this is not the only outreach we're going to be doing to the news media. In fact, there's going to be another article in the newspaper, an online newspaper, very soon. I'm just going to share my screen and show you what that looks like, because I want to make sure that people are aware of the publication. Okay, so this is, can you see that? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
All right, this is Work Bites, and Work Bites is an online newspaper that was started by people who used to work for the Chief Leader newspaper, which is a civil service newspaper in New York. And Work Bites, part of the reason why they split from the Chief Leader was because you have journalists that are tired of being censored in terms of calling out the billionaire class. You don't know if you can see, but it's one of the leading articles here is calls to restore Wall Street tax send New York labor unions running. And so what they're doing is they're putting pressure on union bureaucrats who are not fighting for a wealth tax in New York City or not fighting for a stock transfer tax. And you may ask, well, why does that matter, right? And just to see some of the other articles, they cover strikes, they cover the New Jersey transit deal, the fights of veterans, the attack on Representative McIver in New Jersey with her facing charges for advocating for her residents who are being human trafficked by ICE in New Jersey. That was the incident where Ras Baraka, the mayor of Newark, was arrested. So in any case, they are focusing on the kinds of things that we need to focus on in terms of centering the working class, centering our struggles, showing the unfairness of what's going on, and who is at fault for the suffering and pain in our communities.
Yeah, and John,
Got,
I would also want to tell people not to give up hope. And one reason why I want to tell you that is I want John to tell you how we got in touch with this guy. How I was so like shy back. Remember when we went to?
yeah. Yeah, you remember when we went to the meeting with Errol Lewis and a New York Times reporter, and one of the people there was a WNYC radio journalist.
And I did not want to talk to that lady.
Yeah, and when we spoke to her, we didn't think she was very interested.
Yeah, she was like, who are you people? Like, she was like looking down at us. And I was like, John, that out of everybody, she was the most unfriendliest person. Okay. It was four of them. And this lady was very standoffish.
You're going to be in trouble. You know that, right?
Yeah. And I was like, she was the only one that I said, I don't know. She just looked real strict, so she was the only one that I said, oh, can I take a picture of you? And she was like, okay, and she took the card and she was like, yeah, there's this guy, he's really really great with housing, and I'll give it to her. And I said, John, that lady ain't never gonna give that card to this man. Yeah. And
and that man was David Brand, and he's the person who did the Gothamist article. And also Work Bites was somebody who I know from the trade union movement. His name is Joe Maniscalco, and he got me in touch with Steve Wishnia, who is the person who's researching the article. He interviewed Adina and myself on Friday night. Yeah. And he's planning on doing an article in Work Bites this week. And then he's also talking about potentially shopping articles to other outlets to do more interviews of residents. So that's something we're going to be looking forward to doing soon. Another thing that we have planned is through our media contacts, I won't say who because I don't want to get anybody in trouble. We are going to be kept up to date on Kathy Hochul's schedule. So when Kathy Hochul comes to New York to engage in a press event, to have a press conference or any kind of public event, we're going to look to take Rochdale residents there to publicly inform her about everything that's going on at Rochdale and demand that she meet with us. And we're going to have the news media be aware that we're going to be there. And so we'll try to put as much pressure as possible on her publicly. This is not hostility. It's still yet to be seen what she will do. but I know the pressure works, and I know that you have to keep persistently pushing your demands, or they will ignore you. And now we have a levers of a way to organize that we didn't have, that the community didn't have in the past. So the other thing that we have to talk about is the board meeting on Monday. So the board meeting on Monday was a very important event, largely because of the openness and the hostility that the board, the majority of the board, um, the Jewel of Jamaica representatives showed towards the management company. And it was important that they, kind of publicly really lit into the management company. And so much so that they proposed a motion, which I'm going to put on the screen, which opens the door to getting rid of this clown show of a management company. So in any case, I'm going to try to find the right page. Okay, here we go. Oh, no, that's not it. All right, let me just put it up and we'll find it. Okay, so okay, here it is. Can you see that on the screen? Not very big, right?
No, it's not. It's
All
never
right,
big.
I'm trying to make it a little bigger. I don't know.
It's okay. Just read it.
All right, okay. So basically, the motion reads as follows. It says, resolution, property management services request for proposals, May 19, 2025. Whereas the Board of Directors, as part of its fiduciary duties, has been reviewing the professional services provided by the cooperative's current management firm, Summit Property Management. And whereas the current management agreement expires by its terms on June 30th, 2025. And whereas it is recommended best business practices to conduct a review of professional services so that the cost and benefits can be analyzed and compared. And whereas the Board of Directors has determined that a request for proposal should be issued to a select number of management firms that have experience with regulated cooperatives to provide property management and related services to the cooperative. It is hereby resolved that the Board of Directors directs the cooperative's legal counsel, Norris McLaughlin, PA, to prepare a request for proposal for qualified management firms selected by the Board of Directors, requesting that they submit written proposals for supervision and management of the cooperative. The deadline for these proposals shall be on or before July 15, 2025, which may be extended to facilitate complete and meaningful proposals. Therefore, the proposals shall be reviewed by the Board of Directors with the assistance of legal counsel. Upon the selection of the management firm by the Board of Directors and approval by HCR, legal counsel shall be authorized and directed to advise the cooperative's current management company of the termination of their services should they not be selected from the submitted proposals. So in any case, this, after a long time, is a clear sign that Summit Management's company's days are numbered, and that their clown show of a management company that constantly gaslights and lies and tells half-truths to our residents and treats us like we're stupid may soon be over. And that is a very promising development. And the fact that they did so has a lot to do with the pressure of residents and the fact that it would be political suicide for anyone on the Board of Directors who plans to ever run for office again if they did not stand 10 toes down and do what was necessary, what the majority of the residents want and have wanted for years, and get rid of this management company, because they are the bane of our existence. They have literally dug the grave for Rochdale. They are involved in every single decision that led us to the crisis that we face now. And they have no plan at all to ever get us out of debt. They have no plan at all to ever break up the corrupt relationships they have with vendors, the corrupt relationships they have with Wells Fargo Bank. And they are perfectly happy bringing Rochdale to the brink of collapse. And I believe that's very much because they have a plan for Rochdale. And that plan is gentrification. That plan is privatization. That plan is allowing real estate parasites to come in here and destroy Rochdale and make it a luxury community at our expense. And, another thing that these elected officials need to know is that we are not going to allow that to happen. That if they want to go there, that there will be a rent strike here, that residents will not pay, and we are not leaving. and we are going to dig in and fight for our community. And we are not handing it over to anybody, especially those who don't even live here, and those who are actively betraying the interest of the residents of Rochdale. So we
But
need
John,
that.
when I was talking about a rent strike
Oh, now you're going
in
to.
in episode 1 of Keeping Rochdale Affordable, John was like, "No,
No, no.
John
What I
didn't
was
say
saying is
that."
that it's a last resort. What I'm saying is it's a last resort
He's quick on
and
his
not the
answer.
first
He
resort.
is quick on his answer. Don't
It's
mess
not.
around.
It's
Don't
never
come for
the.
me, John.
No, it's never the first resort to go to war. Okay. I generally counsel peace unless it's absolutely necessary. And I
Okay.
thought, and all these things that we've been doing ever since are all the steps between where we were and that.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the
So
that
it's
that's the
it's where we were to where we're going, right?
yeah.
Okay.
And how do we get there?
How do we get
Um,
there? Yeah. And that's what was looking forward to at the board meeting on Tuesday. Like, we want to find out how do we get from where we, and a matter of fact, we even heard worse news. It's now 57%. We
yeah,
went there looking for hope. I don't even know what we went there looking for. We were just looking for something, but we got something and it wasn't good. 57% is just unacceptable.
yeah. And let's remember why it's 57%. It's 57% because of Jay Williams' fuckery, right? And the bullshit with the
Well,
water with the
well,
water.
and also, yeah, and also I wanted to notice that also that Jean Hall had mentioned this way in advance, and she was saying that, look, HCR, the reason, okay, so I believe the reason why we're not, okay, I believe that one of the reasons why we're here is because HCR implemented a new plan, and the new plan was to address the debt that we have. Because before, all we used to do is just be like, okay, these are our expenses, blah, 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 and then they'd be like, okay, yeah, here's your 2.3% or whatever. But now HCR implemented a new plan, and the new plan was, hey, you have $195 million in debt. How are you going to pay that? They said we can't move forward until you come up with the decisions of how you're going to pay that. And that's how we're reaching these high numbers. That's how we're hitting the high numbers, because before they didn't have that in their implementation. So, basically, is HCR wrong for this? Or are they correct for this, or what? But we know that we're in the middle of the whole situation
Yeah.
and we are
Well,
paying the cost.
Let me address that, Adina. DHCR are not on our side.
Oh
They
no,
are
they're not.
they're in league with these management companies. They're
Yeah,
in league with the rules that allow for private management companies, for-profit management companies.
I
They're
believe
in
you.
league with all the debt they've ever taken.
I
That
believe you.
written into the loan, it mandates that you must have a for-profit management company.
Yeah,
Okay, it's part of the loan.
yeah,
So, but HCR is also the state. They
yeah.
are they are the state's fingerprints
So
on
conflict
this.
of interest, right?
Well, no, it's not a conflict of interest. The conflict of interest is that they're not following their own regulations. When I don't know, somebody posted what the rules are for the HCR, right? And one of them is definitely the the fiduciary responsibility of the board of directors to present a balanced budget every 2 years. And you keep hearing that repeated over and over and over again. That's their hill to die on. We have to submit a balanced budget. There's nothing we can do. It must be a balanced budget. We're not for profit. We can't have any extra income. So the budget is all year to year and it has to be a balanced budget. What they fail to mention is that the other part of the HCR's responsibility is to maintain affordability. And they never mention that. Why did they never mention that? Because they want to throw up their hands and do nothing about the fact that you have a state agency punching some numbers into an algorithm and coming up with a number that doesn't do anything to maintain affordability here at Rochdale or any other Mitchell-Lama. And recently, you'll see in the Gothamist report that there's so many other Mitchell-Lamas facing exactly the same kind of attacks, exactly the same kind of 20, 30, 40, 50% increases. But also what the article doesn't mention is that It's only a handful of them. It's about 6 or 7 of them. There's 212 Mitchell-Lamas in New York State, and the overwhelming majority of them are getting 0 or close to 0% increases. The highest you see is about 3%. And then you have a handful that are in serious financial distress that are being targeted. And that's not fair. It's not fair for handful of Mitchell-Lama cooperatives to be the whipping boy for DHCR or the whipping boy for Wells Fargo, or just be thrown to the wolves when the whole point of the program was to have a commitment to ongoing state aid to keep it affordable. How are you going to keep in the middle of a capitalist economy where it's a race to the bottom and prices are through the roof? And since COVID, you've seen billionaires and their corporations taking advantage of the crisis to jack up inflation way beyond what was actually warranted by the economic conditions. It was simply greed. They just could. They raised it because they could. They raised it because they were able to get away with it because the market will bear it. And so New York State was supposed to insulate communities like ours from those kind of conditions to provide an affordable future. And they've turned their back on us. Up until 2024, they didn't provide any kind of aid that I can find to these communities. And they're a deadbeat, no-show landlord. That's the bottom line. They are responsible for keeping it affordable. So, DHCR, they're a bunch of bureaucrats. And then what was hilarious that I heard at the meeting with elected officials was the proposal that we go up to Albany to meet with DHCR. Why doesn't DHCR come down here and meet with Rochdale Village residents? How are they going to know what's actually going on down here if they don't actually come here and meet with our residents and see the conditions and see the mold we face and the leaks and the bricks coming off our building and the facade work that needs to be done? How are they supposed to know what's really going on here? It's a way to insulate them so they could say they met with us, but they're not actually going to see the conditions. So that's the problem with that suggestion from elected officials. And I'm hoping that our trip to Albany on this bus trip isn't the only time we get to speak with DHCR, that they actually commit to come down here. Adina, go ahead.
No, you're doing such a great job.
Sorry to put you on the spot. I don't want to filibuster.
Well, no, but oh yeah, no, it's okay. But sometimes people don't want to come to your home. They just want to stay outside, and they're like, "Oh, that's okay, that's okay." So they don't want to come in and see because they don't live in a place like Rochdale. They're more isolated from this community. They just put in, as you said, an algorithm, and then they punch in the number, and it's just like me. I am a medical biller. And I bill.
Well, if you got a medical bill from Mount Sinai, you likely got it from me.
So I do medical billing. So basically now there's a bill for 1 million. Okay, no, let's make it better. A bill for $85,000, and that's just basically for a 1-day stay in the hospital. Because the patient, I think a patient almost had a nervous breakdown when I told them the bill was $85,000, and something went wrong and it needed to be fixed, but the patient needed to get involved and fix the bill, and they weren't doing what they're supposed to do. So all I had to do was just press a button and the bill went to the patient. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's just a number for me that the patient got the bill. I didn't blink twice and say, "Oh, I feel so sorry for this patient," or it's an issue, because that's not my job. My job is to make sure that the hospital get paid for what they had to do. So the same thing with HCR. They don't care. All they want to know is that they punch in the numbers and it matches and it fixes them, and then they move on. You know what I'm saying? So people don't care.
Everything is everything until the music stops. When they actually have to face residents.
But when they send me an $1,000 bill, I don't care.
Yeah, of course. But so in any case, like Adina and I often get asked, well, what do we think the solution is, right? What is a fair increase? And I had a discussion with one of the board members recently, a back and forth that went on for a while until the Knick game started, and then she had to go. But it was an interesting discussion. I believe it was Keisha Beasley who I was speaking to. So in any case, she was asking, the question was asked by another resident, what we think is a fair increase. I think that a fair increase should be governed by what the real cost of living is in New York City, which is currently 4.3%. And that's based on the Bureau of Labor Statistics. They do, based on the Consumer Price Index, they do an analysis of what the rate of increase in the cost of living is in cities and towns and villages like ours all over the country. So in any case, that's one proposal. I understand that we're going to have to pay a higher increase this time because of the scale of the crisis and because we have to get out of the situation that we're currently in. Honestly, 6-7% should be the maximum, but I could see circumstances where even 10% may be necessary in order to get ourselves out of this debt that we're in. But also, there needs to be terms and conditions on that. We would only agree to any kind of increase like that if we are getting public refinancing of the debt by New York State at a bare minimum. We'll only agree to such an increase if everyone is investigated, from Wells Fargo to our vendors to these banks to the management company and everywhere else who had any role in getting us into this debt in the first place. And the third condition is that we receive ongoing state funding, not loans, direct grants, direct state aid, not something we have to apply for through 1,000 hoops of fire and fill out applications in triplicate. Direct state aid. I don't think that that's too much of a wild in this, pie in the sky, my feet never touch the ground kind of proposal. It's a very practical proposal about how we maintain cost certainty and maintain affordability. I'm very open to hearing suggestions from your board of directors and from other residents about what they think is fair. But these are concrete, practical next steps. And that would mean that although residents would sacrifice this year, they wouldn't keep sacrificing year after year after year. And we would put our cooperative community, which is supposed to be nonprofit and affordable, on the groundwork, on the foundation that can actually support that long term. And why the urgency? Like, people see me fighting with Jay Williams at the board meetings. Why are we getting into it? We're getting into it because he has a fundamental contempt and disrespect for our residents. And he constantly evidences that every time he lies to us, every time he gives us half truths, every time he gaslights us with, oh, well, market rate apartments are going up and this is just the way things are and the cost of living is rising. And who could prepare for this? And then COVID happened. Who knew? When he dug our grave, he deliberately engaged in actions that led directly to where we are right now. And another thing that causes the conflict between me and Jay is that I don't have respect for people who have no respect for us. If you show me disrespect and contempt and try to silence me when this is our meeting, the board of directors meeting is our meeting, the residents meeting. There's so few people who actually get a chance to speak, maybe 4 or 5. We're time limited to 30 minutes for a month to be able to talk to our board of directors. How dare Jay Williams get on the mic and try to silence any one of us? And I'm not going to have it. And if people think that's disrespectful, so be it. I think it represents a level of self-respect that all of us need to have. A defiance, an unwillingness to be silenced by people who crashed this ship, people who sunk us, people whose every decision put money in their pocket while they put this community in an early grave. And I'm more than willing to live with people feeling like that's disrespectful and maybe I shouldn't say those things. But at the same time, nobody comments on the fact that he was 1,000% wrong. And they know he's 1,000% wrong. And for the most part, the board members stayed silent and let him try to silence the residents for a long time. So they can take their part of the responsibility for that as well. Adina, go ahead.
Also, one of the residents, she got up and she says, "Oh my God, she'd never seen so many residents at board meetings," and she have she didn't really miss a board meeting, and she was a little bit off. She even got into some altercation with one of the residents. But if your house is on fire, everybody's gonna run outside. You're gonna see a lot more people there because it's an urgency. You're gonna see a lot more people, because it's anxiety. And when people are anxious about something, they're gonna come out. As a matter of fact, more people should even have come out, or they would say, well, I didn't see John and Adina last year. How come you just showing up to the fight? You know what I'm saying? But the thing about it is because of the carrying charges is so high, and it never was this high before. Is it our fault why the carrying charges is high? Because we didn't come to the board meeting? Is the residents didn't come to the board meeting? We put people in charge that we feel that they would be able to fight for us. And the same reason, because I'm gonna tell you this. I think a resident was talking to Jean Hall and was saying to her that she should, like micromanage Jay Williams,
That was
because
at Tuesday's meeting.
that
Yeah.
was a Tuesday meeting. She was saying, look, you need to be more on him about what he's doing. And she said, no, I refuse to be paying this man all this money or this company all this money, and then I'm going to go and micromanage that person.
Yeah.
We, the residents, also feel that we elected board officials to help us, to fight for us. So we don't feel that we should micromanage them also.
Yeah.
So, but when there's a crisis, we're gonna come out and we're gonna blame you. Yep, we're gonna be blaming you. That's how I feel.
And Adina also feels some type of way about the fact that Jean Hall is coming out and asking the residents which bills we should pay and how we should get out of a crisis. And the reason why you vote for someone like Jean Hall, who's been on the board for a long, long time, and others who promised to provide real reforms and real accountability and real oversight of a management company that they said has spectacularly failed and engaged in mismanagement and bad decisions that they even voted against. So for you to come to the residents and ask the residents for a roadmap out of this crisis that was not created by us, that was created by constant, never-ending lies and gaslighting and scapegoating of the residents, and telling them that we were going to leverage other people's money and that somehow that was a wise idea. It was a good strategy to leverage other people's money to pay for repairs that needed to be done on 60-year-old buildings. And I was even at a committee meeting the other night, and I had one of the concerned cooperator board members tell me that, oh, we had to take that money. We had to take that money because we had constant blackouts and the lights were going to go out without it. And my argument to her, and Sean Chandler was there, and an argument was that we need to do effective public outreach to elected officials on the basis that they need to represent us and that we need to have affordability that's actually backed up by the state, that the state has a role to play in stopping communities like us from being in the position where we have to borrow money from known predators, from banks that New York City for the longest time refused to do business with because they had a long documented history of racial discrimination against community of color. And in fact, they've been fined hundreds of millions of dollars all over the country for deliberately attacking those communities and giving them much higher rates of interest than you see elsewhere. So I just want to get to the open letter so that people know what's in it. Okay, so I'm going to put that on the screen right now.
So what is the open letter again?
Okay, the open letter is written by myself and Adina, right, Adina? So it was a letter that we came up with in response to a request or a suggestion from Nicole Crystal, who is the strategic organizer for housing for New York City Controller Brad Lander's office. And she said that something that she's found be effective in the past was getting the residents to write a letter, like an open letter that they wanted public officials to sign on to send to those who had the power to actually make the changes that were needed and actually act in our interest. So I wrote the letter, and it was recently sent to all the politicians who are named here. So I'm going to share it on the screen so people can see it. Okay, let's do this here. Okay. All right. So once again, get on the bus, May 28th, 7 a.m., 16909 137th Avenue. It's the Rochdale Public Library. They're leaving at 7 a.m. sharp, leave Albany 4 p.m. So let me try to find the. Oh, and by the way, this is the flyer for the community conversation that was had on Tuesday. This is the Gothamist article, and the motion on the board of directors. So here is the open letter that we wrote. Open letter from New York City and New York State elected officials on the crisis facing Rochdale Village for immediate release, May 25th, 2025. As elected officials representing communities across New York City and New York State, we stand united in calling for immediate action to address the financial crisis threatening Rochdale Village, a historic Mitchell-Lama cooperative home to over 25,000 working class residents in Southeast Queens. We respectfully present the following opening letter. An urgent appeal to protect Rochdale Village and preserve affordable housing in New York State. Dear Governor Hochul, Speaker Hasty, and Majority Leader Stewart Cousins, we, the undersigned elected officials from across New York City, are writing with deep urgency on behalf of the residents of Rochdale Village, a pillar of affordable home ownership and economic stability for generations of working families. We urge you to meet directly with Rochdale Village residents as soon as possible to hear from them personally about the devastating impact of the 57% carrying charge increase currently being proposed by the New York State Division of Housing and Community Renewal, DHCR. This proposed increase, just to be implemented over just 2 years, is not only unaffordable, it is unjust. It threatens to displace thousands of longtime residents, punish a community of color, and violate the state's historic promise to protect and maintain affordable Mitchell-Lama housing. We are also deeply troubled by the predatory high-interest loans this community was forced to accept from Wells Fargo, an institution with a well-documented history of racially discriminatory and exploitative lending. There must be full accountability for all those involved in the creation of this crisis, including the bank, the management agents, and any other parties whose actions place this community in financial jeopardy. The residents of Rochdale Village are calling not for sympathy, but for solidarity and for solutions. They are demanding a seat at the table and a public commitment from New York State to halt the unaffordable carrying charge increases, refinance Rochdale Village debt through a public, transparent process, and provide long-term state investment to ensure this community remains truly affordable. Rochdale Village is more than a housing complex. It is a living legacy of equitable urban planning, racial integration, and working class opportunity. It is worth saving, and the time to act is now. We urge you to meet with these residents immediately and work with them and with us to protect this vital community. Sincerely, Zoran Mamdani, New York State Assembly Member, Brad Lander, New York City Controller, Zelner Myrie, New York State Senator, Adrian Adams, New York City Council Speaker, Jamani Williams, New York City Public Advocate, Jessica Ramos, New York State Senator, Brian Kavanaugh, James Sanders, Gustavo Rivera, Cordell Clear, and Jabari Brisport, all New York State Senators, Farah Sufran Forrest, Emily Gallagher, Marcella Mittanes, all New York State Assembly members, Justin Brannon, a New York State City Council member who's running for City Controller, Donovan Richards, Queensborough President, Che Ase, a New York City Council member, and Crystal Hudson, New York City Council member. So why these particular politicians are we reaching out to? As I said before, a lot of these public officials are endorsed by the Working Families Party. They represent a progressive wing of the Democratic Party, whose base is the working class and poor. In fact, I'm sure that almost entirely they don't accept corporate PAC money. There's a few exceptions, but the overwhelming majority of them don't accept corporate PAC money. They don't accept money from billionaires. They don't accept money from the people who are responsible for our suffering, not just here at Rochdale, but all over New York City and all over the country. And they are much more likely to be receptive to this kind of appeal. And I've already spoken to some of them directly about this. So I'm looking forward to responses from them. And we already have two candidates who've expressed willingness to do so, and that's Zoran Mamdani and Brad Lander. And so in any case, it's just the first step. It's a small ask. It doesn't take very long for them to read through it, tell us what changes may need to be made to the text of the open letter, and sign their name to it. And once we have that, we can go to the news media And that's why it says for immediate release, because it's like a press statement. So we can get that out to the news media and increase pressure on Kathy Hochul and all the rest of the politicians named Hasty and Stuart Cousins to actually act and to not ignore us. And it will also mean that when residents go and find out when Kathy Hochul is speaking in New York City and go there to publicly pressure her, she will have already received this public call, an open letter from these elected officials. What I'm trying to get to happen is to have an elected official come with us when we publicly pressure Kathy Hochul, because I think that'll be even more effective. So I come from the New York City Transit Workers Union, TW Local 100, and as a trade unionist and as a former member of the executive board of one of the most important unions in the history of this country, I have dealt with corrupt bureaucrats my entire life, or seemingly, my entire career, certainly. I've dealt with Governor Cuomo. I've forced concessions on Governor Cuomo when he was pushing an unsafe L train renovation of the tunnel that would have aerosolized silica and God knows what other contaminants into the air. And we forced losses on Governor Cuomo. We forced massive concessions in the scale and scope of the project, which meant that the work that was done was much safer and that the community was protected and transit workers were protected from that. We forced, what is her name now? The head of the MTA at the time, who was trying to push through service cuts. And the rule is it's a federal law and it's a city and state law. You can't have service cuts without public hearings. And she wanted to go ahead with those cuts without public hearings, even after she was told by a judge that she couldn't do so in a previous lawsuit. So I confronted her on this and I pressured the executive board to file a lawsuit. And that lawsuit eventually got her to concede. Sarah Feinberg is her name. So in any case, what I understand is that you have to make it impossible for them to continue to do business in the way they're doing business. You have to make the negatives higher than the positives, so much so that it's not worth it for them to ignore us, that it's not a good look for them to show us disrespect. And it's not a good look for them to just abandon us and do whatever's clever for them and their donors. And that's where we need to get to as a community. We have to make it painful for them. We have to make it impossible for them to continue to function that way. And we also have to communicate self-respect by demanding respect, by having demands. And that's what I want to hear from our board members in the time between now and the bus taking off at 7 a.m. on Wednesday. We had better hear about what the demands are. We should have a conversation about that. It should be an open conversation. You have Real Deal Rochdale and other ways to communicate to residents. We need to be on the same page. We need to know who we're meeting with. We need to know what the plan is. We need to know what do we plan to achieve out of this intervention. I don't just, like I said with Adina about the rent strike, I don't just propose things just to propose things. I have to know what's the exit plan. How do we get from where we are to where we're going? And what do we expect to gain from doing any particular tactic or strategy? I don't rule any tactic or strategy out. And I certainly don't think that I should make all the decisions, but there has to be a discussion. There has to be a democratic process where our community decides what tactics and strategies work and what tactics and strategies don't work. And what I can tell you, though, is that the tactics and strategies of the majority board for years, for decades, is a recipe for suicide and disaster for our community. And when it says in that open letter that there needs to be consequences for those who made decisions that put us in this condition, we're talking about you. And let's not have any confusion about that. Okay,
Also,
you can't make decisions that risk the health, the future of 25,000 other residents, and then say, well, everybody make mistakes. Sorry, that's not true. Good, Adina. We got to wrap up. I know we're at 54 minutes.
well, yeah, I can't give you the point of wrapping up because the wrap up person, the wrap up dog ran away. So Chewy's not here. I don't know where he's at. So
Chewy already had his cameo. That's good. I mean,
yeah. So basically I think what happens sometimes is the board of directors, they do things, but they do things and the residents don't know about it. And I know that it's not everything that I'm aware that it's not everything that you're going to talk to the residents about. But at least that, as you said, whoever is going on I hope that on Wednesday morning they have a huddle and talk about what's going to happen, and they have paperwork, things planned to show the residents that when they get there, I hope it's not just you guys going out and saying, "Hey, I'm here." It's just something more very concrete about what's going to happen when you get there. So hopefully, you know, we send the message that they should have something available for you guys to
Yeah.
talk about, or who you're going to talk about. It's not just you showing up and doing nothing doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing though too is like that we have to have a united front. Like when we're there, we're not looking to be in disunity with anybody. This is about unity, and that's why we have to have the discussion before we go, so we're all on the same page about what the demands are. And I don't have all the answers, and I'm more than
But
willing to.
shouldn't that been coming out already?
Yes, but let's hope that it's going to happen between now and Wednesday. We want to remain positive about this, and we want people to be enthusiastic to go. We don't want to throw cold water on people's enthusiasm, because it's that enthusiasm and it's your own stories and your own anxieties and you speaking for yourself that is what all of this should be about. And I'm more than willing to accept that the majority may not accept my proposals, but I want to hear what the proposals are so that we can go in common cause and in unity and be the most effective force that we can be. The point of getting all of these numbers of people there is to bring all of our forces to the battlefield so we can get the best outcome. And that's what this is really about. And I'm willing to work with anybody to do so. It doesn't matter if we disagree or disagreed in the past. It even doesn't matter if they were part of the concerned cooperators all along. There's always time to change course. There's always time to break from the past pattern. But unless we begin to show that, these politicians are not going to take us seriously. If you go to them and say we owe money, we have debt. Here's our financial records. See how much debt we have? That's not an effective appeal to get them to understand that we are not at fault for that debt. That there were decisions that were made that were beyond our control. And they also want to hear, well, what is the demand? What do you want to do about this? Why are you constantly in debt? Why does it seem like this cooperative is constantly dysfunctional? And we have to explain to them, because we know, many of you know much more than we do because you have been here longer. And who can more effectively explain that than the residents themselves? And so we have to prepare ourselves. We cannot be unprepared for these interventions, or they will not be as effective as they need to
Yeah,
be.
because that's a long time. People taking time off from work. People have to find babysitters. People have to, it's a long bus ride.
Yeah,
So, we want to go there and make it effective. We just don't want to show up, I think.
absolutely. All right, so we need to begin to wrap up. It's at 58 minutes, so we did a good job, Adina.
Yes, we did. I did a good job.
Yeah, we have to come up with another signal though, because obviously Chewy's not going to be the wrap it up bee. Uh,
No, he ran away, got
can't
tired of
be
sitting
counted
here.
on.
So
He's fired.
he's fired.
All right. So we'll talk to everybody soon. We look forward to being in community with you on Wednesday, and at every step along the way, feel free to reach out to us, put comments in the on the live stream. Let us know what you think. It doesn't matter if we don't have the same agreement, if we don't have the same starting point. It's not about the starting point. It's about the end result. It's about where we can all get together through our own collective struggles and standing 10 toes down and demanding self-respect, demanding that there will be consequences if you disrespect us, demanding that we are not going to let them to turn their back on our past gains and disrespect our elders and our community and say, well, the world just doesn't work that way anymore. If you think so, you got another thing coming, and we have to be explaining that to them constantly. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great night, guys. Be safe. All right. It doesn't look like we went live.
The live is still on.
It is? Okay.
Yes.
I thought I closed it.
Nope.